cabin had been sitting in those woods for 40 years. The floors were warped, the walls were stained, the furniture hadn't been touched in years, but the basement lock was brand new. He noticed at the moment they walked in. He just didn't say anything about it. Here's what actually happened. 3 trips, 3 groups of people who thought they were just going somewhere fun. What they didn't know going in would change everything about how they got home. If they got home at all, stay with me. The sound came at 2:17 in the morning. Not footsteps, not an animal, something wet, something heavy, being dragged across the ground outside their window. Marcus sat up in the dark and didn't move for a full minute. He told himself it was a deer, a branch, the storm. He almost believed it. This was supposed to be a quiet weekend. Marcus, his roommate Derek, and their friend Cal had booked a mountain cabin in rural North Carolina. $62 a night, split 3 ways, no signal, no neighbors for miles. That was the whole point. They got there Friday afternoon. The place looked exactly like the listing. Small, quiet, isolated. But something felt off the second they stepped outside. Behind the cabin, there was a well. Old stone, probably as old as the place itself. But the dirt around it was fresh, loose, recently turned. Marcus pointed it out. Derek laughed. Cal didn't care. They went inside. That night, it rained, and the sound came back. Marcus didn't sleep. He lay there listening as it dragged across the side of the cabin again. Slow, deliberate. Then it stopped. Completely. No footsteps walking away. No sound fading. Just gone. Think about that for a second. If something heavy stops moving outside your window and you don't hear it leave, then where did it go? The knock came at 9. 3 slow knocks. A man stood on the porch. Green uniform. Badge. Clipboard. He said he was a local game warden. Said there was an escaped poacher in the area. Someone known for breaking into empty properties. He needed to come inside. Now here's the part that doesn't make sense. Everything about him looked real. The badge, the tone, the story. But Marcus didn't open the door. He told him they'd call the sheriff first. The man just nodded. Calm, patient. Then he looked past Marcus toward the basement door and said, "You already saw it, didn't you?" Not a question. Marcus slammed the door and called 911. Cal started counting. 43 seconds. That's how long the man stood outside. Then he stepped off the porch and walked straight into the woods. No car, no sound, just gone. I'll tell you what the police found in a second, but think about what he said. You already saw it. What did he think was inside that house? When the deputies arrived, they didn't check the house first. They went straight to the well. They stayed down there longer than they should have. When they came back up, one of them pulled Marcus aside, asked him when they arrived. Marcus said Friday. The deputy wrote something down, didn't explain why. Marcus found out later. 2 bodies were at the bottom of that well. A couple, early 30s. They were supposed to have checked out the day before. They never left. But that's not the part that stayed with him. This is, one of the bodies had a wallet. Inside it was a student ID. Same university as Marcus. Same dorm building. The name on it was Derek, his roommate. The same Derek who had been standing next to him all weekend. Think about that. Marcus called Derek's parents that night. They said they hadn't heard from him since Wednesday. 2 days before the trip, Marcus went over everything in his head. Derek laughing at the well. Derek barely talking. Derek never checking his phone. Derek who said, "I'll get the door," right before the knock. Marcus had stopped him. The person in that cabin wasn't Derek. Derek was already in the well. The real game warden was identified later. He had been tracking the property for weeks. The owner of the cabin had been missing for 3 years. The warden wasn't there to hurt them. He was trying to warn them. He just assumed they already knew. The case is still open. And whatever was inside that cabin with Marcus and Cal was never found. The van door closed in under 3 seconds. By the time Ryan understood what was happening, 2 men already had him pinned down. One held his arms. The other went straight for his pocket. He had been outside for less than 4 minutes. Ryan was in Cancun for spring break. 40 people. Same resort. Same trip they had planned for months. Nothing unusual. That's what made it easy. He was at an outdoor beach bar when a well-dressed man started talking to him. Friendly, relaxed, spoke perfect English. He said he could get him something better than what the resort vendors were offering. Premium, cleaner, stronger. Ryan hesitated. Then the man smiled and said his cousin was nearby. Translator. Good guy. Just around the corner. Ryan followed. 30 seconds later, he was in the van. Think about that. 30 seconds. That's all it took. They didn't waste time. Phone gone. Wallet gone. Cash gone. One of them leaned in and asked him something. Slow, clear English. How many people are you here with? Ryan doesn't know why he answered. Maybe he thought it would scare them. Maybe he thought it would make them stop. He told them, 40 people, same resort, right down the beach. The two men looked at each other, switched to Spanish. Fast, aggressive. Something changed. The van stopped. The door slid open, and they shoved him out onto the road. No warning, no explanation. Just gone. Ryan lay there for a second, trying to understand why he was still alive. Then he got up and started walking. Here's what he didn't know yet. When he got back to the resort, nobody was relieved to see him. They were already panicking. 2 people were missing, both from his group. Both had left within the last 2 hours. Neither had come back. Neither was answering their phones, because their phones were still in their room. Ryan described a man who approached him, the friendly one, the one who started everything. The group went quiet. One of them pulled up security footage from earlier that day. The same man had been near the pool, watching them for over an hour, before Ryan, before the others. He wasn't guessing. He was choosing. I'll get to what the police said in a moment, but stop and think about this. If someone watches your group for an hour before approaching, you were never randomly picked. You were selected. They filed a report that night. The officer listened carefully, wrote everything down, then asked Ryan to describe the first man again, the friendly one. Ryan did. The officer stopped writing, looked up, and said he recognized the description, but not as a cartel scout, not as a stranger, as someone already reported by another person in Ryan's group. The next morning, everything came together. The man wasn't a stranger. He was one of them. Same college, same fraternity, on the same trip. He had been working with a local network, finding targets, passing information, setting them up. Ryan had been picked days earlier. In a group chat, he had mentioned bringing a lot of cash. That's all it took. The cousin, the van, the setup, it was planned. And Ryan wasn't released out of luck. He was released because he said something they didn't expect. 40 people, same resort. Too much attention, too much risk. They already had 2. The frat brother was gone the next morning. Room empty. No luggage. No message. Nothing. Ryan finished the trip. 3 more days at the same resort. Same pool. Same beach. But something changed. Every time he sat down, every time he looked up, he felt like someone was watching him. Not once. Not twice. Constantly. He never proved it. He never saw anyone. But he never felt alone again. The missing students were found later. They survived. That's all that was released. The investigation moved to federal authorities. The frat brother was never found. Ryan graduated the next year. He never told the full story. Not to his friends. Not anyone at school. Because part of him still thinks the person who set it up might not have been the only one watching. Jess had one hand on the car door handle. Behind her, 15 people stood on the deck of that house and watched her without speaking. Not moving. Not calling out. Just watching. She had the keys. She knew which car was hers. She just couldn't get herself to turn her back on them. The invite came through Instagram 3 weeks before spring break. A mutual follow. Someone whose account had been connected to people Jess actually knew. Lake House Party. Lake of the Ozarks. Memorial Day weekend. The message was warm, specific, personal feeling. It named 2 people Jess knew from school as confirmed attendees. She brought 3 friends. Her roommate Priya, a girl from her floor named Dana, and Dana's boyfriend, Caleb. Here's the detail I want you to hold on to. Jess texted that mutual account, the one who'd invited her, before they left, just to confirm the address. The message delivered. It was never read. She figured their phone was dead, or they were already at the party. She didn't think about it again until much later. The house was real, massive, actually 3 stories, private dock, fire pit, 100 yards of cleared lakefront. When they arrived, there were already 30 or 40 people there. The host introduced himself as Garrett. Late 20s, relaxed, exactly charming enough. He explained that he collected phones and car keys at the door, a policy, he said, to prevent drunk driving and to keep the party off social media at the property owner's request. It was reasonable. It was the kind of thing that sounds responsible. Everyone handed them over. Jess would spend a lot of time after this asking herself when exactly she knew. She thinks it was about an hour in. Something about the party didn't move right. Jess couldn't name it at first. The music was on. There were drinks. People were talking, but nobody was really mixing. The groups that had arrived together stayed together. Nobody introduced themselves. Nobody asked the basic questions strangers ask each other at parties. And Garrett kept appearing, not throwing the party, monitoring it, clipboard tucked under one arm, moving through the space, pausing at each cluster, moving on. Around midnight, a couple near the back told Priya they were packing up and heading out. Jess watched them go upstairs to grab their bags. They didn't come back down. She told herself they must have gone out through a different exit. But there was a window that looked over the back of the property. Their car was still there. Jess was awake before sunrise. She slipped outside while most of the house was still sleeping. The shed at the back of the property, the one she noticed earlier, doors slightly open, was larger than it looked from the house. She pushed the door open. 3 cars inside, all from people she'd watched leave earlier in the evening. And in the far corner, between 2 of the vehicles, a man was sitting on the floor, back against the wall. Eyes closed, she recognized him. He'd been at the party the night before. She touched his shoulder. He didn't respond the way a sleeping person responds. She ran. She found Caleb, and they found the keys in a drawer in the kitchen, still labeled, still organized. They grabbed theirs, told Priya and Dana to move. Garrett appeared in the doorway before they reached the front door. He didn't raise his voice. He just said, "That's a bad idea." And then everyone in that room, every single person who had been at that party, turned and looked at them. Same expression, same stillness. Garrett looked at Jess and said, with complete calm, "You've already been selected." They ran. They got to the car. They drove. They didn't stop for 40 minutes. When they finally had signal, Jess called a mutual friend who had sent the original invite. Her friend had been in class, had no idea about any part, hadn't sent any message. Her account had been compromised 3 weeks earlier. Someone had used it to send targeted invites to girls in her contact list, girls who fit a specific profile. The house was a real rental property. The owner had no knowledge of what was happening on their property. State police investigated. They identified the organization as a predatory network that operated out of multiple states, specifically targeting college students during holiday weekends. Dana's boyfriend, Caleb, was interviewed separately from the rest of the group. He'd met Garrett once before the trip. He'd introduced Dana to the mutual friend account that sent the invite. He'd been recruited 6 months earlier. He didn't know what the operation actually was, he said. He thought it was just a party promotion thing. He said that. 3 weeks after they got home, Jess received an anonymous message from an account that no longer exists. It said, "You only got out because we already had our 4. See you next spring." The number 4. Their group had been exactly 4 people. Jess still doesn't know if Caleb understood what would have happened to them if they'd stayed. She never asked. She just stopped answering his calls. The investigation identified several other groups who had attended similar events across 3 states. Not all of them left before morning. Jess goes to smaller schools now, transfers a lot. She told the detective working her case that the worst part wasn't the house. It wasn't Garrett. It wasn't even the message. It was looking back at that 4-hour drive to the lake and realizing that the person sitting next to her in the backseat already knew what was waiting when they got there and smiled the whole way. 3 different places, 3 completely different situations. But in every single one of them, the most dangerous person in the story was someone the victim already trusted. Not a stranger jumping out of the dark. Someone who knew their name. Someone who'd been around long enough not to seem wrong. That's the part that stays with me. We talk a lot about watching out for unknown threats. The strange van, the stranger at the bar, the too good deal. And those things matter. But sometimes the thing you should be watching for is already in the car with you, already knows your schedule, already knows who else is coming. Stay aware out there. If something about a trip, an invite, or a person ever gave you that feeling, the one where everything looked fine but something just wasn't right, there's another video right there. Take care of yourself.